Now, worrying reports out of the Central African Republic. Latest reports indicate the death toll from Sunday's clashes has now risen to at least 2. There have also been reports of gunfire today at the presidential palace in the capital, Bangui. Dozens were wounded in the city at the weekend, mostly civilians that were caught up in fighting between militiamen and UN peacekeepers. The militia are calling themselves the Self-Defense Forces, and they control a volatile district known in Bangui as PK5. Now, the UN says 11 of its peacekeepers have been wounded in those clashes, along with more than 20 civilians. Shops have been burned and looted. The unrest broke out when peacekeepers tried to dismantle a roadblock set up by the armed group that controls PK5. And let's get you more now on that story. I'm joined live from New York by our UN correspondent, Liling Tan. Liling, considering that this latest round of clashes directly involves UN peacekeepers, just talk us through the response from the United Nations.
Well, in terms of details, the United Nations spokesperson didn't provide a lot more by way of an update over what we heard from MINUSCA right in the wake of this latest incident. MINUSCA had talked about the casualties. One person at the time, they had at least one person killed, several others injured, and of course this was part of an operation. Now, what this shows, though, is that this is the second major round of clashes in a week after April 3rd, when there were similar clashes in the MINUSCA temporary base in Takbara, in which I believe 2 blue helmets were, oh no, actually 1 blue helmet was killed and about a dozen other peacekeepers injured. And what it underscores is the environment in which UN personnel are working in the Central African Republic, where they themselves are being targeted by armed groups. And we have known for a while now that the United Nations has been trying to address this, because this is a problem that is also happening in other missions where peacekeepers come under attack. The UN has been working to try and resolve this, but it is a persistent, monumental task, and it appears, obviously, that work is still in progress.
Indeed, and I suppose one of the solutions that they're attempting to explore is the idea of getting more troops on the ground. And it appears with these clashes that perhaps that can't come soon enough. But Liling, what are the challenges of getting more boots on the ground?
Getting boots on the ground is a challenge, yes, but it isn't one of the key challenges in itself. The real main hurdle is what happens after these troops are deployed on the ground. Now, we know that the situation in the C.A.R. is volatile. The conflict is split along not just sectarian lines, but community lines as well. And that has made it very difficult for the mission there, for the UN mission there, to manage this kind of security threats. Now, there's also talk about whether 900 additional troops is sufficient to operate in a country that big, in a situation that volatile. And there's also the question of resource, whether the peacekeepers, the blue helmets, the personnel that work within the mission MINUSCA are able to respond to the kind of threats that they continually face. So the question is about the sufficiency of this deployment. But the other thing too is about quality. It's not just quantity. The quality of the troops being deployed. We know that MINUSCA has come under a lot of criticism over sexual misconduct, sex exploitation, and sexual abuse. And the Security Council, in moving forward this mandate to increase troop levels, had also asked the UN Chief Antonio Guterres to ensure that those troops being deployed are being vetted for a history of sexual misconduct. So that's something that the UN has to deal with as well, in terms of making sure that the peacekeepers they're sending out to the C.A.R. are equipped and are of moral character and able to deliver on their operations and their task in an efficient and effective manner.
And of course, the conflict has led to multiple humanitarian crises. Bangui, up until now, has been relatively stable. We've seen much more of the trouble in the country being concentrated in more rural and remote parts of the Central African Republic. But what are UN agencies able to do to help civilians?
Now, UN agencies have been operating in the Central African Republic for years now, and we have a wide range, the UN has a wide range of agencies down on the ground. For example, the World Food Program has been operating there, trying to distribute food to civilians in need of food, but also has put in place programs involving cash and vouchers for food as well. And the UN's Food and Agriculture Organization, FAO, has also been there trying to revitalize the agriculture sector. And UNICEF, the UN's Children Fund, is also operating in the C.A.R, trying to address the needs of more than 1.3 million children. And of course, the UN Refugee Agency, too, is operating there, trying to assist to help more than 500,000 refugees. And that's it. The UN is seeking funding, a funding appeal of about slightly more than $500 million for this year in order to make sure its UN agencies can continue to do its work to assist civilians there.
Indeed, a situation that is equally volatile as it is tragic. Thanks so much, Ling Tan, joining us there from the UN headquarters in New York.